From work. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. And then Micah, you'll make us host at you have a hard stop at 7, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All
I'm
right, no,
gonna
we're ready to go live.
I'm gonna turn off my video because I'm
You're
eating.
ready. Okay, Miss Leonard, you're ready.
Welcome, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our bi-weekly meeting as the Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc. Excuse me. We're here with our panelists, Kathy Leonard, Captain Brian Hubbard, and we do have Deacon Lyles joining us. He was having a little bit of a technical difficulty, so it looks like he'll be jumping back on with us sometime soon. We have been making incredible progress. We've been meeting for quite some time. I have gotten through all the level one, two, threes, and we're at the last of the level fours. And so I think we've made quite a bit of progress. There are still three MORs that we need to look at for the level fours today to decide on discipline. And then we'll be going into the bulk of cases that are the lowest level moving forward. And so I will pass it to you, Captain Hubbard, to get us started. And welcome everybody. Looks like we have Deacon Lyles back with us as well too.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. And actually, I would like to start with we we talked about carotid restraints and how it is now banned by policy, but also California law. We do not train on it, so we it was asked for me to draft manual of rules section for it. And so I think you all hopefully can see my screen here, but I'll read this to you. So this is prohibited use of force techniques, carotid restraint chokehold. Members shall not apply a carotid restraint, chokehold, or any technique that restricts the flow of blood or oxygen through the neck of another person in an attempt to control or restrain them. This prohibition applies under all circumstances without exception. The carotid restraint and chokehold are prohibited by California Government Code Section 7286.5, effective January 1st of 2022. The Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission post has removed these techniques from all law enforcement training curricula. For purposes of this section, a carotid restraint is any technique that applies pressure to the sides of the neck to restrict blood flow through the carotid arteries. A chokehold is any technique that applies direct pressure to the trachea or windpipe to restrict airflow. So that's the definition, if you will, and we agreed that the only offense, which would be the first offense, is termination. Any questions or comments on that?
That sounds good to me. First offense termination. No, but that is also because the assumption is that if there was some type of extenuating circumstance where that technique was used in a life-saving manner or in some desperate situation, then the would they would they not be sustained because of that? Or
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. And yeah, it would be a life-threatening moment. It would be something that would be considered, I guess, outside the bounds of what we train. And I'll give you another example that, I've never experienced in my career, but let's say that a person was actively shooting at us and the only object that we had to stop that threat is using our vehicle. Well, that's not a technique that we train or encourage, but it's like a life-threatening moment. This would fall into the same category. Again, very rare because ideally the officers, the newer officers especially, don't even know how to apply the carotid restraint because they're not even trained on it. So it shouldn't be just a muscle memory response from them. So it would have to fall under something very critical.
So, question, does that California Government Code Section 7286.5, does it make any exceptions for the use of the carotid restraint?
I'll have to look that up. I don't think it does.
Yeah,
Last,
I don't think so either.
let's see if I can do a quick
and
search here.
and and we're supposed to think about this after the panel has decided that there are no exceptions, that the person who applied it and was found um, to be in the wrong.
That's
This
right.
so they've decided that there is no exception. There is no extenuating issue that the chokehold should have been applied. So this is just open and shut, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only sad part about it is that I don't know if in the natural course of a tussling on the ground, I've done that many times, and on the pavement. Um, if you're not taught not to do it,
Right.
you may fall into that lapse just out of fear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm sad to hear that Post doesn't train on it. I thought they would train not to do it. So you won't have that naivety of officers coming in and, like you said, Captain Hubbard, they don't know anything about it. Well,
Right.
if I've never been trained not to do it, I might find myself grabbing somebody by the neck just because that's a wrestling move or out of personal fear.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And while Post does not train it, we do have a very good and robust arrest and control staff that teaches every technique except for this. So we give officers the confidence to, you know, grapple or wrestle with someone, knowing in full confidence that they're not going to resort to this because we teach them so many great techniques and regularly also.
I guess what I was trying to say is that I would hope that OPD tells people don't do this.
We do. Yeah,
Okay.
we do. We do. Yeah.
That was going to be my comment as well, that this government code is taught to
It,
officers.
it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and to Deacon Lyle's point, and further my concern are officers who are trained in jujitsu, right? So martial arts where this is an
Yeah.
acceptable way of tapping someone out, if you will. And I'll give you another example. Like we don't teach punching someone in the face. We use distractionary strikes with open hand. It's not just, the efficacy of using a closed fist and the efficiency. It's also, you can break your hand. But it's hard, let's say, if an officer has, since a young age, years of boxing experience to untrain that. And we are very sensitive to that. But the carotid restraint, especially, that's like, especially now that we have this, it's like, no, you need to unteach yourself if you do have that habit from outside of law enforcement experience, because it carries very severe discipline and punishment. Yeah.
That's why it's imperative to have termination on the first time it's used.
Right.
I hope they look at that and go, oh my God, why? What is this all about?
Yeah.
Now let me tell you why you should never use this.
Yeah. I guess the good news is even when it was lawful and trained, it was not a utilized often um, technique just because it's so technical and it almost needs to be perfect execution for it to be effective. And so it just wasn't used that often. That's why I didn't have much anxiety when Post removed this. Actually, being years in training, we lost a lot of recruits because of this technique was often failed. So they failed out of the academy. So I was actually happy when they got rid of it. It's like, oh, we can actually retain a lot more recruits now.
Well, I don't know. Los Angeles PD used it quite often, and Daryl Gates defended it up until the very end, saying that African American males have a different vascular system. That's why so many of them have been choked to death by LAPD. And in comparison, it didn't happen to Latinos, Asians, or Caucasian citizens.
Yeah, he wasn't a doctor either, so
No,
we have to take what he said with a grain of salt.
he actually said that. I
Yeah.
mean, it hurt law enforcement. Uh, it was unbelievable. He actually said that. The only reason why they're dying is because they're made different by God, I guess. They're a different kind of human being.
Mm. I never heard that before. That's wow.
I want you to look it up, Brian, because
I will.
that's the kind of stuff that we are why we are here.
Yeah.
It's because of stuff like that. Look
Yeah.
it up, man.
Will do. And Kathy, I just looked at it. There's no exceptions in the 7286 section.
That's what I thought. Thank you for confirming.
Well, yeah, thank you. Any questions or comments on this?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. We are, oops. I lost my sharing capabilities. Give me one moment, please.
Can you hear any conversation on my end?
Mm-mm.
Okay, let me
No.
know if you do. My sister's here from Alaska, and so sometimes, they get a little excited. Okay, excuse me one moment. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Yes.
Okay, so we left off on duty firearm discharge to dispatch an injured animal. Uh, this is very restrictive because we did have problems with this in years past. Uh, there are certain steps that we need to take before we just dispatch an injured animal. But this, if true that one did do this, then it would be considered a level 4 use of force. I cannot think of a time where someone was sustained for this, at least recently, so I don't have any current examples, but we need to come up with the range. If sustained for this, what should be the range for the first, second, and third offense?
So question, by dispatch, I guess you mean putting an animal down.
Yes. Yes.
So even if an animal is injured to the point where death is imminent, or not imminent, but a strong possibility, the officer would have to let the animal suffer.
No, so we instead of making the decision to dispatch it just based on that, we would first call animal services to see if they can come and care for the animal. But also we have a lot more Bay Area resources where we can transport the animal to a animal hospital.
Okay.
So we have a few more steps before we get to this point, but if we have a situation where they're severely and it's just they're suffering, then a supervisor can make the decision for an officer to dispatch the animal.
Okay.
And just to be clear, Captain, dispatch means shoot the animal, correct?
Yeah, so there's no other alternative there.
Yeah.
Yeah, shooting.
Um, I'm concerned about officer just wellness too. I mean, I would guess that there's a good handful of officers that are pet owners and have dogs.
Yes.
And I could imagine that being quite traumatic for an officer to have to dispatch an animal rather than just taking them to a 24-hour vet and letting them do that or animal control. It would have to be it would have to cross that threshold of that more of their own moral compass of like, no, I have to do this beyond
That's
my
right.
own trauma. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm not an animal lover. I mean, in the sense that I didn't grow up with pets or anything, but I certainly wouldn't want an animal to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's assume for a second that the officer made the wrong decision and they end up getting sustained. What would be an equitable range here?
So I guess the first question is an animal's life equivalent to a human life? And I know there's many people that love their animals and would say yes. And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'll give you the official legal analysis on that. It's that animals are considered property under the Fourth Amendment, but not to the level of human. No.
And so would you judge the behavior, this is Marcia, would you judge the behavior of the officer as intentional or non-intentional?
Their act would be intentional, but it would be out of compliance. So, for example, let's say the animal has a broken leg, and the officer's like, "Well, I better dispatch the animal because he has a broken leg." And during the course of the use of force investigation, the chain of command says, no, there were three other alternatives you could have done. So we hold the officer in out of compliance for violating this.
Mhm.
I'd say counseling the 15 days, and then you know, the second one, 15 days of termination.
Yeah, I like that starting point, and I also like termination being the second one, which would mean there's no third bite at the apple, right?
Right.
Yeah, because I can imagine like a third time an officer dispatching I mean, it rarely happens the first time, right? So,
Right. You've been counseled. We found you guilty 2 times at doing this. Why are you shooting people's dogs?
Yeah.
I wish I could see the invite. I'm trying to get on the meeting on my computer without any success. I can't find
Marcia,
where.
I always have and welcome too. I always have a hard time finding it too on my on the email search. I put in Discipline Matrix ad hoc
Okay.
webinar invite, or if you put in webinar, then I think your own specific webinar invite comes up.
Okay.
Try those keywords.
And
I
it's
always
from
have a hard time
Zoom.
finding it too.
And it is from Zoom.
I put in Zoom and I still didn't get it.
Maybe if you type in webinar, that usually helps pop it up for me because it's a webinar
Okay.
invite.
That's what I'm doing now.
And unlike before where I would send it earlier in the week, I sent it today so that it would be in your inbox for today.
I know you do. That's how I'm able to get it on my phone, but I want to get it on my computer. So no results with that. So let's see. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry. My computer's old and tired.
Okay. All right. The next one is control hold applied. So this includes escort, uh, elbow twist lock. It's hard for me to demonstrate this on a very small screen here, but basically we control one's arms by bending their wrist or holding their elbow to our body in an effort to bring them from one place or another, or to get them under control to apply handcuffs. Okay, so it's definitely an intentional act, and it's one where the person has to be offering some resistance. It's not just because. Again, this is a very low level technique. It's supposed to invite pain, but not extreme pain. Obviously, it's just to get compliance so we can control them. Uh, Rarely would one be sustained for this because it's such a low level use of force. An example of where it would be sustained is if the person's offering no resistance and the officer then applies this, that would be considered out of compliance.
Sorry, that's for the twist lock.
Yeah, it's escort position, twist
I've
lock.
seen that done, not by an officer, but I've seen that done. Well, what is the escort elbow?
It's basically holding one, so it's controlling their movements by their elbows. So you just leverage their wrist and their elbow together. That's an example. You can also this is somewhat of the armbar technique, but again, wrapping my arm under them for leverage, and then I'm holding onto their elbow, little things like that.
Okay.
Bending their wrist back towards their forearm.
Yeah, like that.
Would you guys indulge me to read this one article on the LA Times? This is on Daryl Gates about what we just talked about. One paragraph. It says, by turns, talking about Daryl Gates, by turns charming and brash, articulate and tactless, he generated controversy with gaffes about Latinos, blacks, and Jews. Most famously, and it's famously, not infamously, but famously, with a remark about blacks faring poorly under police chokeholds because their physiology was different from that of normal people. That's the LA Times.
Crazy.
And he was at the time he was considered the United States top police chief.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that in another setting. I took the sociology of sports from Harry Edwards
Yeah.
when I was at Cal. And one of the students said that Black men played sports really well because the bones in their legs were longer or some kind of something he said, which was absolutely false. But he tried to say it was because of the way the body is in a Black person. And of course, Larry, Professor Edwards and other students shot this guy down and said, come on now.
When
But it just reminded me of that.
when Daryl Gates said this was after the Rodney King riots.
Of course,
He
yeah.
said it
I
after
remember him
that.
saying that.
He said that, and it's in essence saying that African Americans are subhuman.
Yeah.
And he said it with a straight
Yeah.
face. That's why we're here. Very damaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
So if African Americans are killed by police, they're subhuman, and if they're good in sports, it's because they're superhuman. You just can't win, right? It's just like
Right.
they want it both ways.
That's how racism works.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's disgusting. Oh, all right. Well, thanks for sharing that, Deacon. That's. I think you're absolutely correct. That's why we're all here.
Okay, so back to control hold. Where are we at for the range? Again, this assumes that the officer's out of compliance for it.
And Captain, no injury, right? Because if there's an injury, now it elevates to use of force with an unattended injury or unintentional injury.
Yeah, beyond first aid. So them saying, "Hey, you hurt my wrist,"
Yeah.
but it's not broken or sprained, so it's beyond first aid. So basically, they would have to be transported to the hospital for it to be elevated.
Counseling to 10-day suspension.
I'm comfortable with that.
Right. And then, and if it's a second,
Well,
So the second time you want to give it 10 too? I was
No,
gonna
I-
say
Yeah.
I was gonna say 20 or 30.
Well, I would say
10 to 30.
15 to 20.
Well, 10 would be the starting point, right? So we're leaving off where
Right.
yeah, so
I say we go all the way to 30, maybe. S to 30, and then the last one, 30 to termination.
So, but what if you gave 10? Okay, even if you gave 10 at the first instance of that misconduct, you would start it maybe at 15 to 30. You could pick anything in between. I get
Right.
it.
yeah. Okay. All right. The last one is canine deployment. Suspect located by canine, but no bite occurs.
May I ask a question? Going back to control hold. So what is the discipline now?
Yeah, so there's no range on this. It's very broad because it just fits under use of force. That's why we have these broken out by each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, the last one is canine deployment. This is where the suspect is located by the canine, but no bite occurs. And this is just alerting detaining behavior only. And just as a reminder that a canine bite, even if it's on clothing, would be a level 2 use of force. The reason why we have this as a standalone level 4 is for tracking purposes, but it's also goes into what we talked about before about just the history of using canines and um, our relationship with the community. Just deploying the canine can be pretty traumatic, even if no bite occurs.
Right.
So we want to know if the decision to deploy was in accordance to policy. Okay, so we have it as a level 4 use of force if the it's again only if the suspect's located. So not for a search where no one's located. That is tracked, but in a different way. So
So,
assuming that a canine handler on against policy deployed a canine, located a subject with no bite, what would be the range for that?
so in that instance that you're talking about, is the dog let loose and not on a leash?
That's right. Let loose.
Yeah, that I would have to say more than 10 because there is a racial component here and a history of dogs being sicked on Black people fighting for civil rights. So I want to start that at a higher range.
Hmm.
What is the training now, or is there any training with respect to canine deployment? And do they discuss the racial overtones of using a dog against African Americans?
They do, and our policy speaks to it also. I did send the policy earlier today. It's pretty lengthy, but I would say our canine handlers are probably the best trained or has the most training within our department. They train weekly, and it is an extremely difficult thing to get even the dog certified to be an actual police canine, if you will. So yeah, there's a lot of training that goes into that team.
Well, I know there's a lot of trauma with a dog chasing you down, but that is the, I guess, supplement to an officer uh, maybe chasing down and getting the suspect. And I'm sure there's trauma, but without a bite and the dog healing, because is there data that shows that the officers deploy these canines more often against brown and black people, or what?
Yeah, we do keep that data, but it's we're focused on the behavior. So the policy doesn't say you can just deploy it to search for anyone. It's very restrictive on when a canine can be deployed.
Okay. And what are those instances? Can you break it down?
Yeah, a violent felon is primarily it, but then there are restrictions from that. So if you know that the person's underage or elderly or pregnant or has another medical condition, things like that, then it's restricted, even if it's a violent subject.
Mm,
It is a tough one for me because, you know, you just committed a crime. You just robbed a corner store, or you you involved in some domestic violence, and and you're running through the neighborhood, and the dog, I let the dog loose, or I chase you down. You should get some trauma. I didn't hit you. I didn't beat you. The dog didn't bite you. If you have some trauma, I don't care.
yeah, I'm feeling like that too. That's why I asked those
Yeah,
questions. No,
Well,
I'm
here's
just.
the thing. Is the person just a suspect, or does the officer know for a fact
They're
that
all
they
suspect.
committed yeah, but do they know for a fact that they committed a crime? Because let me tell you, if the police sicks a dog on me, I'm not stopping. I'm going to continue to run because I know the history.
I understand that, but
And so
but
you
but
know,
but everybody's a suspect until proven guilty. So everyone's a suspect. However, in this case, the issue is that the handler let the dog release the dog out of the regulation. He should not have done that. So he's not following the act, the regulation. Um, and But the suspect was located. He is a suspect, so we're gonna arrest him. He may not be guilty, but he is a suspect, so he or she is gonna be arrested. So I don't think that's a severe situation. First time out, I would say counseling to maybe 3 to 5 days off. First time. Um, and then second time maybe 5 to 10 days, and then if now we got a pattern. If it does it a third time, and then it can be terminated because you just not going to obey our regulations. That's how I see it. That the officer is going to let the dog go based on what he thinks is best, not what the regulation says, not what his training is saying.
You said, what did you said, counseling to what? To 5 days?
Yeah, if
I'm gonna say I can't agree with that.
okay, I
Yeah.
respect that. I mean, when you chasing suspects, we're not chasing innocent people. We're chasing people who we suspect to not be innocent. They haven't been proven guilty, but we're chasing somebody who we think has just robbed a store or just burglarized a house or just sexually assaulted somebody or just beat somebody up or just purse snatch someone. You never chase after someone that you know is not involved.
Well, perhaps you wouldn't, but you know
No,
there are racist officers out there, and I think 5 days is not enough.
absolutely, but but on the same, I guess
Same
what I'm
token,
saying is,
this is a tool that is available to them, and when misused after training and clear parameters of how it's used, the issue is, can that person be retrained or counseled? So you always want to pick the lowest possible punishment in order to get the result you want. Don't do it again.
Well, if they have training that already talks about the use of dogs being racialized, 5 isn't, I just don't think 5 is enough.
I
I mean, I'm looking at this article that's called "The Police Dog is a Weapon of Racial Terror." And this is a recent article.
I'm
So
not
I'm not comfortable with 5.
I'm not arguing against that, but OPD officers have been individuals who terrorize people.
Yeah.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah, I
But I
mean,
think that yeah, but that dog with the teeth and everything, I mean,
I'd rather deal with the dog than some of these guys that's chasing after people. I've seen it. I've seen it. We got to get our blow in. We got to get our. Well, you've seen it. You've seen some of these beatings that these guys get after they've ran from folk.
well, my preference is counseling and suspension of my beginning would be 15 or 20.
Ooh. Mm. No bite, just trauma.
No bite. Just a dog. Just the guy let the dog out and chase the guy.
Is psychological trauma.
No, I said
Every
trauma.
suspect ought to be psychological traumatized.
I know,
If
but
you-
every
if you just-
suspect isn't guilty.
Yeah. But I
but-
think what we discussed before too has been like intent, right? So even though there isn't a bite in a face value, it doesn't seem as that egregious of a violation. If an officer was out of policy in releasing that animal, then there was some intent there, like I don't know what stopped the dog from like having a conscience and not biting. And I've even seen this. I actually got a question, and just to complicate this further, Captain, I actually, have a story about this when I was young. I had a friend get chased by a police dog, and I don't know if they were in compliance, the deployment of the dog was in compliance or not, but the bite didn't happen because he was able to get in a car, right? And the dog was, barking crazy at the car, trying to get in. Officers caught up to the car and were able to detain him. But before that, they were laughing that the suspect was my buddy at the time, was so terrified that this dog was chasing that he's in the car, like shaking, terrified, right?
Sure.
Does that then become now a demeanor case because of they're laughing at him and that type of stuff?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I would also think that that's more of an aggravating factor of why this would be maybe out
At
of
the
control.
highest level.
out of compliance. Yeah.
Yeah, demeanor certainly.
And even though there wasn't a bite, that attitude and that laughing further exasperated that historical trauma. We're not just talking about just the trauma of running from the cops, but this historical trauma and what a dog itself symbolizes, how it's been used racially.
I think you guys. I
Right,
think,
and if they're laughing, there's some intent there, and it should
Yeah.
be more than 5 days suspension.
I think the dog is far less dangerous than the officer
Mm.
when they're chasing a suspect. We want the officers to have
Well,
the kind
I
of
won't argue with you on that, but I'm still
Yeah,
saying that there's.
the
I'm still
officers
saying
ought-
I believe it should be more than
the
5.
officers have, but history has shown that the officer chasing a black suspect is far more dangerous than a dog chasing a suspect.
Well, I'm not going to argue that, but I'm still saying that
But-
the
but that-
psychological damage should be more than 5 days of suspension.
So let me just clarify a few things. One, and I'll go back to, we don't deploy dogs based on reasonable suspicion. Our objective is to effect an arrest. So we have probable cause at that point. So it's definitely at a higher level. But also, it's very, very rare that we would deploy a dog on someone who's running away from us. Usually it's a very controlled, we believe the suspect is in this perimeter. We have officers around the perimeter. We give multiple commands over a loudspeaker that can be heard by everyone in the neighborhood for the suspect to surrender. They fail to surrender. So instead of sending officers into this possibly armed subject environment, we send the dog in. So it's just a lot more restrictive than I think what we're talking about here, where the suspect's just running away and we just deploy the dog. We don't do that. It's to locate a dangerous
That's what I thought.
within this perimeter.
I've seen it. I've seen it work. I've done it. I'd rather have the dog than the guy coming in there going after someone that's hiding in the warehouse and they're scared to death and they hear a screwdriver fall on the floor and they let off 5-6 rounds. We've had cases in Oakland where people been running away, been shot in the back. A dog is far less. We can't get mired in the history of the civil rights movement with the dogs and think that the dog is more dangerous to a fleeing suspect than the officer.
I know, Reggie, nobody's making that argument.
But I'm making
We're
the
not
argument.
making that argument.
But Kathy, I'm making the argument.
I know, but
I'm making the argument that you have to understand that the most dangerous agent between the dog and the officer in the history of OPD has been the officer.
I agree with you.
Okay,
I agree
so
with
if a
you,
dog-
but that still doesn't change my mind.
I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm trying to make my point. But if a dog is let out by this individual and the dog doesn't bite, he alerts. He stops and barks. He's over here. He's over here. And the suspect hears the dog. And then they come up and say, come out. Come out. And then the guy comes out. That is far better than the officer going in by himself. Telling you, the results are better. So I don't think it should be 15 days or 10 days. If on the first offense, the first time he did this, counseling or 5 days. And the second time, then we go up.
So what does everyone else think in terms of this, in terms of the suspension?
I say counseling to 5 days as well.
What were you thinking, Kathy? More 15? Counseling to 15?
10
Oh,
or
broader.
10 or 15.
Can we meet in the middle and say counseling to 10 for the first offense?
Excellent.
I'll go along with that.
I will too.
Me too.
My last words I'll say to this is I'm confident that we won't get certainly to the termination point, even this section, because an officer can't just walk in and be a canine handler. They have to be certified by posts and also by the department. So if they commit this violation, it is likely that they would be decertified and no longer a canine handler. So you can also look at that as punishment in itself. It's not supposed to be punishment per se, but you're no longer a canine handler. And there's actually a financial incentive to be a canine handler. You get a certain amount of pay. So there's other punishments kind of built into this, if you will.
So you said there could be decertification. So can that be placed on like number 2 or number 3? I mean, I don't know. How does that look?
Yeah, I mean,
At what point would would the officer be decertified?
it's a judgment that a chief would make. And I mean, there's a benefit to putting it in here so it's not arbitrary. We want it to be consistent. But
You mean like 10 days to 30 days and decertification?
yeah, that would be a unique position that we could take because we've never seen that before. But that I think is an idea that we can wrestle with here. And even going back to the level 2 use of force for a canine bite, consider decertification as part of the range.
I think that would be a strong incentive for officers to be very, to really think twice before they release a canine. And I know they're in the heat of the moment. I understand all of that. But I think just looking at that would give officers pause. So if you're decertifying on no bite, then would you decertify on a bite?
I could. Let's go back to, let's see.
I need to look up decertification because what are the circumstances under which an officer would be decertified? I mean, I'm sure they've got a range.
And do you have to list that that is a consequence, decertification, or is that something that's already built in? I know you said that you sent us the policy.
Yeah, I have to look at the policy again for decertification. There are things in there. I don't want to, I don't think that like a first offense sustain automatically decertifies. Again, it's more of the chief of police decision.
Right. Yes.
But in this case, can we say on the second offense that's actually the action they have to take?
Yeah, sure. There's nothing that prevents us from saying that. I'm assuming it doesn't really conflict with the current policy. I'll have to look at that up, but let's give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we're starting at counseling, it accounts for it could be a very minor technical thing. They should be able to have counseling and have a second chance to not lose their certification as a handler. But if you do it a second time, then that then starts begging serious questions.
Yeah. I mean, I would
So-
probably want to decertify myself out of fear of being terminated in case I make the third mistake. So I think that would be fine.
Okay, so post sets forth the examples of when an officer would be decertified. Is that right?
That's for SB 2. Yeah, and right. And yeah, to your point, excessive force is one. So if Post does this independent investigation and finds any of these to be excessive, then it's not about being a canine, you'd be decertified as a police officer.
Whoa,
Right.
that's why I'm concerned about putting that in there. If you would charge just this one thing, canine deployment, second offense, and would you be held to the highest penalty if you wanted to give it, and that's it, suspension of 30 days, or as a consequence of having a second offense, you could be decertified?
It technically can be both. It would be you're serving a suspension and then you're also decertified as a canine handler.
So decertification, if I remember correctly, that means you can't work as a police. There's stages, like maybe you can't be a canine officer, but decertification at some point can also say that you can't be a police officer anywhere in the United States. Is that correct?
In California,
California. Yeah,
In,
post.
oh,
Yeah,
in California only?
that's right.
only because that's all we
Yeah.
have
Well, then I don't
jurisdiction
know
over.
if I would do it here. I would do it on the bite. I wouldn't do it here where there was no bite.
Well, okay, so we're talking about canine decertification, not
Right.
not California post decertification. It just means
Oh, okay. All
yeah,
right.
you can't be a
So,
canine handler anymore.
so just within the department, not a
Right.
post.
That's
Okay.
right.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, post does not have any say over who's a canine handler, who's not. I mean, I guess
Right, but but post sets forth the standards under which you could decertify then? Or the
uh,
procedure, I should say.
as a police officer, not canine. Yes,
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
decertification to us is you're terminated. So we can terminate someone, and they might not be decertified with California Post.
Okay.
And
Reggie,
then-
what are you thinking? Because I see you're looking a little concerned here. I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Well, I was reading something here. I was just about ready to ask the captain
Okay.
if he heard any of this. Says, for example, here, and Oakland Police Department policy provides that a canine handler may be decertified or removed for the program for receiving an overall unacceptable or needs improvement performance evaluation, failing canine certification on 2 consecutive occasions, promotion to a position that no longer permits serving as a canine handler, removal from the program by the chief of police based on a recommendation through the chain of command.
Green.
Yep, that's right.
Hmm.
But I like to be consistent, and this is where, if you like canine handler A, but you don't like canine handler B, you could say, yeah, you committed this second offense, but because we like you, we're gonna, you serve your suspension, we're gonna keep you versus the second one where you don't. And putting this in here just makes it clear. It's like, hey, you violated this twice, you're decertified, period.
Right. So you can't play favoritism.
That's right.
And we would
Right.
hope that the chain of command would do their job.
Yeah, yeah. And really it would come down to the use of force board also making their recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So if we got what the real crime here, I don't think is the dog. The real crime here is the guy who lets the dog out
Precisely.
in violating the policy. That's what I was trying to get at. That guy is the dangerous person. And if he's got to do it, if he's doing it a couple of times, he don't belong in the program.
And so you wouldn't want to put canine decertification there, or would you want to put canine decertification since the elements of decertification don't speak to suspect located but no bite occurs?
No, it would apply here also. Ideally, it should be in the policy, but because this is not the canine policy ad hoc, it's just easier for us to flag it here in hopes that it gets changed later.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
And I like, where he says canine deployment. Could you put 2 words in there, against policy? Yeah, that's better. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. All right, so that's it for uses of force. And now, as we look down this list, these are the remaining manual of rules. These are the manual of rules that have a third offense that don't have termination in the continuum. Okay, so we dealt with all the terminations, either first, second, or third. These are, I'm not being dismissive, but like the lower end manual of rules sections that have progressive discipline, but it's not considered as severe.
What is WR?
Written reprimand.
Okay.
That comes after counseling and training. Okay, so 314.03-2. So all these are class twos. This is just general conduct. The first offense is counseling to S3, second is written to S5, third is S5 to S30.
Do you get a lot of complaints in conduct towards other demeanor?
Oh, yes. Yes.
That would be that issue you raised, Kathy, of laughing at the suspect who jumped in the car,
Right.
evade the dog.
Right. And that's why I was wondering why it was a suspension of 3 days. Is that enough to deter the officer from, being disrespectful to, I guess by demeanor, you mean being disrespectful to the public?
Yes, profanity would be one.
Okay.
General rudeness would be another. With body worn cameras now, it's actually, I would say rare that we would have these. We do have them, but we get far more complaints that are not true. People just say, "Hey, the officer cursed me out," and watch the body worn camera. None of that is true. In fact, the officer was
Okay.
very kind. They make them against dispatchers all the time when it's all being recorded. It's just like, well, that's not true. So, we do get some sustains, but it's not as heavy as what one would expect.
Okay. And then I think the second offense with the written reprimand, that goes in your file and nobody wants that.
Right.
So I think it would seem to me that would be a deterrent.
And Captain, these are existing ranges right now that we're looking at.
Are. Yes,
So the question is, are they appropriate?
that's right.
So I
Okay.
guess it would depend because I'm trying to think of a demeanor. If you're cursing on a member of the public, you just get a 3-day suspension. That's just so unprofessional. It seems like it should be, you know, 5 days or something. That's so disrespectful.
I've never experienced a officer cursing out anyone. Usually it's like saying a curse word only.
Yeah. Exclamation.
Ah, okay.
And just remember that, the chief reserves a right to aggravate up. So let's say it's a special circumstance where, yes, the officer did curse out someone. The chief absolutely can go higher than 3 days if he wants to for the first offense.
Or certain buzzwords, certain N word, B word, C word.
So are you saying it's not a fast rule that in progressive discipline that you would start with the first offense if this is the first offense?
No, it would be considered a first offense if it was indeed their first, but if it's special circumstances of like,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Is there a special circumstance ruled in one of these MORs?
I'm sorry, how do you mean?
Well, if I were the officer's attorney in an arbitration, I would argue, well, this was the first offense, even if it was egregious. So I'm asking, how do you get past, say, the maximum is 3 days? How do you jump?
Only the chief can do that, and it's during a robust conversation that we have during the discipline hearing, where there's a pretty large audience to include the city attorney, the city administrator's office, the OIG, CPRA is often present. And so it requires, a lengthy discussion, but also the chief to commit to, hey, yes, the range is only to S3, but I'm aggravating up because of these circumstances. And it's a hard decision for the chief, especially under task 45 of being consistent. But usually when I see these, which is rare, again, but usually when I see these, the chief has good reason to aggravate up.
Yeah, like in the case of a racial slur. I mean, that's just almost unforgivable.
So I
In
guess
my
what you're
book. And
saying,
I would think that 3 days, if you call someone a racial slur, is just a slap on the wrist.
That's different. That's a different MOR. That's discrimination. So that would be much.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
this is
well,
just,
that's why I was asking you, is there
Okay.
a different MOR
yeah,
that allows the chief to aggravate up? Because
yes,
if I were the attorney, I would say it only says you could go to 3 as the maximum
right,
for
right.
first.
So we would be pick the most severe. So that would be discrimination, and that carries much more heavy weight.
And where is that under the MORs, or is that somewhere else?
Uh, well,
Should it or should it be included here?
well, I no, it's a different MOR. I don't know if let's see if I can find it.
Before you do that, wouldn't it be wise just to add 2 or 3 words that the chief has the I don't want to say luxury, has the
Discretion?
discretion to aggravate up in every circumstance, and that wouldn't violate the consistency clause either, and it would get around what Marcia is trying to alert us to.
Sure, I can put that. Well, I can tell you that I'm working on. I have a lot of policies I'm working on. Another one is how how discipline is applied, and this is more task 45, and so it would go into that section or that policy when I'm writing it.
And I think it should go in both places
Yeah, no doubt.
because
But
people won't know it. People won't know
Oh,
the
here it is. Okay.
45.
It's 30, a suspension of 30 days.
yeah, conduct towards others.
Okay, well, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But to Deacon Lyles, I agree with you, and I certainly can put it here. What I like to do is always reference policy by saying, according to policy XYZ, the chief reserves a right to, yeah. So,
My philosophy is that it shouldn't be less being said; it should be more being said. When we streamline the conversation and these staccato explanations, that's where we have these gaping holes where people can get through. If we want to say the chief has discretion in this particular case, it doesn't hurt the former, number 45 at all. Just add a few words here so that when people look at it, they say, "Well, the chief has a discretion." Redundancy is it doesn't hurt.
yeah,
And that gets around the union attorney
Exactly.
basically, saying, hey, I got to be on notice. And notice is through these MORs. And it says here, hey, this is as high as you can go.
And this is the first offense.
And this is the first offense.
Yeah, but it was an egregious one. And it's different than most first offenses.
Right.
And the chief has the right to mitigate this.
And I'm fine with that. Putting that language in.
okay.
And so, what is conduct towards others' relationships? What's an example of that?
I need to look that up because I don't.
That domestic violence?
No, that would be criminal.
Yeah, because this range is pretty low, suspension 2 to 5 days. That's why I was wondering what type of relationships we're talking
Oh,
about.
if you remember, we had a robust discussion. Members and employees shall not inappropriately convert or attempt to convert an on-duty conduct to an intimate relationship. I remember having a
I
very,
yield to that.
Ah,
yeah,
I yield last year, I think.
yeah. I remember that.
okay, I remember too.
Was that our infamous?
Yeah, I think you remember that, Marcia, too.
That was fun. Yeah. So the range of that is S2 to S5, S3 to S10, and S10 to S30. And I just want to be clear with this. I don't want I don't want to open up the box again to have an argument, but this assumes a lot. Like the officers responding to a domestic violence call, and then here they are hitting on the victim and trying to convert this relationship. It's not the officer has a casual run-in with someone that's not law enforcement related, but they're still on duty. This is more of just like you're inappropriate. You know it when you see it. You're inappropriate. You try to convert this into a relationship. That's where this would apply. And I can think of two cases in particular in my tenure in being in internal affairs where this was an issue, and they did get sustained.
And they got 2 days suspension?
No, well, we met in the middle. So the first, with how we deal, and this goes into me having to write a policy on how we do this, but even though it says S2, we meet halfway between these two things. So it's really S3 and then aggravate down or aggravate up depending on the circumstances. So really, let's assume that the officer did this. The chief would probably choose a 3-day suspension.
Wow. You just think about the fact that an officer trying to hit on someone, and what does that person say?
Well, I mean, sometimes
you-
welcome. That's not the point. I mean, there could be other things attached to this. So if it's more stalking behavior or harassment, then there are different MORs to cover that also.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. That's where I was going with that. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So any questions on that one? Are we good with that range?
No, and on this one, the chief can also use his or her discretion to increase the amount of the suspension.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is availability of off-duty members. This has to do with, we always talk about the next great earthquake and officers being or everyone being available to come in for emergency situations. And there's certain rules applied to that about updating your contact information. You don't always have to be on call per se, but have to be reachable, if you will. So this for the first offense, counseling to S2, written to S3, S3 to S30. I can't think of a time where we actually sustained someone for this.
Okay, so this brings into question officers who live outside of
The back-
Alameda County
Yeah.
or Contra Costa County. For instance, like there's a number of officers that live in Humboldt County. Like, how can we, if
Lake.
there's an emergency, or some that live in, I heard there's some officers that live in Vegas and fire personnel too. If there's an emergency, how do you get them here?
Don't.
Didn't we hear that
I
they,
know, and that's the problem.
they
'Cause
live
I've heard some officers
Casper?
say that I'm not
Yeah.
coming down. I live too far. I'm not coming down.
They
Just
can't
think
say
about
that. Yeah, they can't say that.
it.
The insubordination. You can't do that.
Exactly, insubordination. Okay.
Trust me. Trust me, in the Oakland, Berkeley, North Hills fire, we couldn't get people to respond.
Yeah.
That was a conflagration, and that's what happens. These people are human, and if the fires is happening in your, well, I'll tell you the story. I was at Claremont at the Circle. That was the command center, and I was manning the phone. And
During
behind
the
me,
firestorm?
during the firestorm, and Gary
Okay.
Cates, the chief of Berkeley Police Department, was talking to some other chief, and he said, if the wind does not change, this fire is going all the way to Emeryville. My mother was.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Emeryville. My mother was in Emeryville.
Yeah.
And I turned around and I said, "What did you say?" Now at the time I was a sergeant, and he's a Berkeley fire chief, and he snapped at me, and I thought in a very rude way, "Just get back to the phones."
Whoa.
And I just turned around and got back to the phone. And when they left the command center, I went and got a set of keys and drove down to 1044 47th Street, picked my mother up, and drove her out to 87th Avenue to her sister's house, and then
Yeah.
came back.
Because they
No.
were going to let the hills burn.
And I was ready to take the discipline. Now, you know,
Yeah.
we remember these are just policies. And so we have a standing law now that says you cannot say how far a police officer can be away from responding. So they live so far away and there's no muscle in these things to discipline them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it had come down to Emeryville, I would have been in trouble. I lived in South Berkeley at the time, and we could see it clear as day. And so
Oh
I would
yeah.
have been hit. I would have been hit in South Berkeley.
Had I not heard that, I wouldn't have. I would have stayed right there. And when I heard it, and he snapped at me, I went back to the phones and I manned the phone for a minute, and I said, "What's more important to you?"
Mm.
Well, thank goodness it didn't happen.
It didn't happen,
Thank goodness.
and the wind changed. I want to thank the Lord.
I
for
think
that.
the fog rolled in.
Yeah, it was the wind was coming from out of the east in a westerly direction, and it turned around from the west back to the east,
Mm.
and it stopped it. And I thought that was miraculous.
Were you an officer then, Captain Hubbard?
Oh no, I was in. Well, I was much younger, so I'm sorry. I don't want to say what grade I was in, but I was
and
not.
obviously I'm much older, but
I
I'll
didn't
never
say
forget
that.
it. But
It was horrific. It was horrific. My sister had come over and we looked towards the Berkeley Hills and it looked like I thought it was a chemical fire because it was a orangish. It wasn't red. It was a weird color. And I called KTVU when we came back out because it looked like it had spread more. And they said, yeah, there's a big fire in the hills. And we're like, oh my God. But we were very afraid it was going to come because actually a lot of the soot from the fire rained on my car on the the street in South Berkeley. I was on the street behind off of Ashby behind Whole Foods, and that whole area was just I mean it was ashes everywhere.
that day that the fire broke out, 49ers played the Atlanta Falcons,
Right.
Candlestick, and me and my partner Kenny Griffin went to the game, and the soot was raining down on us at Candlestick.
I was coming
What?
from church.
Oh, I didn't know it reached that far.
Absolutely.
I was coming from church on 13 and I was so crazy. I was looking at the smoke. I said, "Oh, did I leave the iron on? Is the house burnt?"
You're thinking it's a house fire. Yeah, it was a house
Yeah.
fire, all right.
And they didn't think it would jump 13, and it jumped 13.
Yeah.
Almost got
My
Johnny
sister's
Harris.
in-laws' house was not only was their house burned, the concrete foundation melted.
Oof.
And when I finally went up there like a couple of weeks later,
Mm.
it looked like just huge craters. You could still smell the acridness of the smoke. It was traumatic to go up there, really.
It was
Yeah.
traumatizing.
It was very traumatizing just to see it because just for miles and miles, all you saw was you'll see a standing fireplace.
And the number of
It was
officers we
horrible.
lost who were driving up to the hills to rescue people, but they were
Gotcha.
driving up into the hills where there was no oxygen,
Right.
and
Mm.
they passed
Coming
out.
down, some people got caught coming down and died.
Absolutely,
It was awful.
and we
Well, the
found
streets were so narrow.
that officers under cars passed out and burned, passed out in the car, and they just couldn't
Oh.
breathe. They had no oxygen equipment or anything, and so
That's awful.
it
Yeah,
so
because fire just sucks up all the oxygen, the air.
absolutely.
It takes all the air. I didn't realize that.
So
And you could be a half a mile or a mile away from the wall of the fire and still are in danger because there's no oxygen to breathe.
Wow.
So when you just keep that in mind, if we can get on the phone all we want until you got to come down here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, that's good to know.
So as a segue, and given that example, right? If you have officers that are running to the fire, passing out, giving their lives, and then you have an officer on a third offense not being available to serve the public or his department, and they're only getting 30 days suspension. Is that appropriate? I almost feel
Well,
like
it starts off with 3 day suspension. Look at the third category.
Well, okay, but
Wow.
this is just so I want to make it clear that there's a difference between this and insubordination. If someone calls me and says, Brian, you got to come into work, and I just don't, that's insubordination. That carries much more heavier weight. This is
Right.
me ensuring that I'm making myself available. So I'm not getting a new cell phone and then I don't change it with the department. So it's like, hey, I never got your phone call. The idea is that you're always in a position where you can be reached if we have situations like that.
Okay, I
That's what this
see.
is about.
Like
Okay.
you live in San Francisco when you told us you lived in Oakland.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
or you failed to
Now it's
update your
clear.
number and we tried calling you and you weren't available.
Right.
Right.
So if I'm an officer and I got bad signal, right? But it's really, really, it's not me just being like, oh, I can't hear you, Captain, right?
Yeah.
Really have bad signal. It's on the officer to immediately make themselves available as soon as they can, right? And that would alleviate them from being sustained for this.
That's right. And really we talk about it. I mean, I was, in the 1989 earthquake, our communication was a lot different. Now with an earthquake, it is likely that our cell phones won't work. So I keep saying like we need to come up with a
Oh,
policy where if this happens, don't wait for the call. You should assume to be needed, come in. And there, that's a citywide initiative also.
Well,
Uh yeah,
doing in
so
'89, we had pagers.
right.
Ah,
That was the day of
right.
pagers, and my pager was blowing up at the football game saying, "Come in."
Mm.
ooh,
Yeah.
So the pagers aren't affected by, I guess, the cell phone towers then.
It hadn't. I guess it hadn't destroyed them all
Right. And
at
and
that point.
so nobody uses pagers anymore, right?
Not that I
Is
know.
there a requirement that, because I could see how cell phones it could be a problem. Is there a requirement that officers have a landline? Like we still have a landline.
Mm.
Okay.
but landlines aren't like, I don't think the landlines are what we think they are. I think they go down too
They
if
go
the
down.
electricity goes. Yeah,
Yeah, but
they're
if
not
you're
the
not in the
ones
fire
where I
area,
think
your landline is okay. You're not going to have that problem.
The way they would communicate is would be through ham radios and radios, and so it would be telling folks you got to come in,
Right.
and then that is based on training and commitment and loyalty and sense of duty. You'll have people who will respond, but you're going to have people who are going to say, "No, I'm not doing it."
Yeah.
Okay.
But because it's an availability issue, then the way I'm reading it is the first couple of offenses aren't that serious, right? Um, or as it goes back to my original question of like, if you're negligently not available a third time, like that's kind of a pattern. That's like,
I'm with you, Ricardo. I think that if you're not available and it's your fault because you didn't tell us that you've moved or you've
on
got a new phone
vacation.
number
Yeah.
or you trying to do something slick, uh, you know, um, say you live one place but you live someplace else and you got an answering service at that phone or whatever. I'd let you get away. I get first offense, but that second offense, it's got to be more than 3 days.
Well, look at the third offense. It starts at 3 days.
WR is a written what?
Reprimand.
Yeah.
that's a little higher than counseling and training.
Yeah, I don't think when they wrote this they was factoring in earthquake conflagrations or things like that. We
So
hadn't
here's
experienced
something
that around here in a
interesting.
long time.
A second offense is a write-up and or 3 day suspension. And then on the third offense, there's no write-up.
No,
Right.
No, a suspension is a write-up in your jacket. It's going to go in your jacket.
Well, then why are we making a distinction here that actually says a written
Good
reprimand?
question.
that's the
It's,
bottom.
It would
it's
seem
a
like it
lower,
was
it's a lower discipline
Lowering it.
than suspension without pay.
That's right.
This should be 5 to 15 days on your second offense. Third offense ought to be 15 days of termination.
All right now. Yep. And that ought to make you figure out how to live in Oakland.
Well, you'll get your phone number straight with
The chief lives in Oakland. I love that. Anyway,
What chief?
chief of police lives in Oakland. He's been living in Oakland. He said
Who
about
is the chief of
He
police?
ain't no chief of police, though.
here.
He is
He's an
not the
interim
chief
chief.
of police.
Acting.
Well, there's a difference. There are 3 other very qualified candidates.
Right, but my point is that
No.
he's an interim chief and he lives in Oakland. I
That's
think that's a
better.
good thing.
Yeah, but
That's only the point I'm
dispute
making. I
that.
think it's
Okay.
great. Yeah.
That's a good point, but he's interim.
Okay, so I guess peace officer status. What does that mean?
So that is where if you're off duty and you need to invoke your status as a peace officer, then you need to invoke your status as a peace officer as opposed to not saying anything. I can read it here. Let me just the right of off-duty members to assume peace officer status while their own time and not engage in outside employment is set forth in Penal Code 830. Whenever possible, off-duty members who place themselves in peace officer status while on their own time shall immediately identify themselves as a peace officer and display their police identification. Off-duty members shall not place themselves in peace officer status while engaged in outside secondary employment. Under no circumstances shall an off-duty member who is under the influence of any intoxicating substance place him or herself in peace officer status. When an off-duty officer is a victim of offense, he or she shall normally maintain his or her off-duty status and allow on-duty officers to handle the incident.
So you're saying like if a police officer has a second job or night lighting as a security guard somewhere,
Which is against the rules.
he can't say he's a police officer? I don't understand.
Well, yeah, I mean that carries a different weight because you can't just get a secondary job without chief approval. But let's say that, I do have secondary employment, then there needs to be a separation between that employment and my status as a police officer.
So I'm not, so I don't understand what this misconduct is then.
Yeah, so we want again, it's hard for me to come up with an example because I've never seen anyone get caught up with this, but let's say that I witness a fight and I say, you know what, as a police officer, I feel the need to intervene. This policy or this manual rule says, yes, do that, but you need to say that you're a police officer and show a badge. So that person knows that you're legitimate, not just some, hey, I'm a police officer impersonation. Right. So
Okay.
think of it as safety for the public. Because there are impersonators out there and they can be predators. And so this is like, no, not only are you saying it, but you're displaying your Oakland police insignia. So, there's accountability there. Yeah.
Okay, so on the third offense, I have the same, I guess, concern as we did in availability of off-duty members. You've got written recommend for the second offense, and then you've got 3-day on the third, 3 to 30. So should it be higher? Should we follow the example of the one above that, or is it not as bad, for lack of a better word?
So think of it this way. These are class 2 violations, and I don't want to water down our class 1 violations by making these just as heavy. So remember, I have to win this argument in front of all the stakeholders who include all the unions. And so if they say, well, you're saying that this carries the same weight as a class 1, it's going to be a challenge. So, we just have to be careful of making it too heavy.
Well, I'm not saying make it too heavy, but you've got a written recommend under number 2. So what should number 3 be?
Oh,
Are we comfortable with the discipline under number 3?
Yes, suspension of 3 days is a written reprimand. It's just a different name. It's tomato. Written reprimand, no days off, no, it's punishment. Written reprimand is punishment. You don't lose any money.
You don't lose any money and you don't lose any days off.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
But on the third offense, on a 3-day suspension,
you're going to lose money.
And that's a written reprimand.
Okay. All righty. I understand.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is notification civil. So this section applies to if you're noticed for a civil action against you or you're participating in one, that you need to notify the department, even though it's civil. It's important for the department to know that. It's required that we notify the department.
And it's a regulation on how many days you have to do that.
That's right.
Hmm. So are we comfortable with the discipline on this one?
Well, I would hope that one does not have more than one civil action against them in the course of their career. So I just don't see a second or third offense being an issue. But yeah,
I just
Well,
don't
somebody
know.
may sue them as a police officer. Well,
And,
no,
and
that
that's
could be a
different.
civil action.
yeah,
It could be.
somebody could sue you because your tree in your backyard
Yeah,
because of the wind fell and
Right.
tore down their fence.
yeah,
So you've got to notify on that one.
You got to notify.
Okay.
that's right.
So you have no control over who sues you, or less control.
Correct. Right. Well, I'm comfortable with the discipline on this one.
Okay.
Okay, insubordination and disrespect.
Yeah, we had a pretty lengthy discussion on the definition of this, but this is the weight of if it's disrespect, then it carries pretty heavy counseling to S5, S5 to S10, S10 to S30. This usually comes in the form of inappropriate email saying to my commander supervisor's face something disrespectful to them. So it's a little bit different than insubordination of you asking me to do something and I don't do it. This is just flat out disrespectful.
Right. I'm surprised it's not higher.
Yeah, I don't. You mean you can't get
Insubordination is bad.
You can't get terminated for
Saying the
Yeah.
F word or the MF or.
yeah, to your captain.
It might when you stack them together. So this would be disrespect and probably demeanor, as we talked about earlier. So it would have heavier weight.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that the third offense isn't termination.
Yeah,
Particularly insubordination. I mean, that's bad.
and on disrespect.
You have to have order. You have to have order on the force,
Yeah.
and you've got to obey the chain of command.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, if one officer gets away with it, they'll say, "Well, you know what? This was light," and other officers may be inclined to be insubordinate too. I don't know. I think it should carry a heavier weight. But what would the chief say to this? I wonder what the chief would say with this range of discipline.
I mean, he would agree. I would say this though, if I can just play the other side. People with rank carry a little bit more by naturally just credibility. And what I don't want is for an unethical supervisor commander to be sensitive to what you as a subordinate say and just say, you know what, you were disrespectful when it really wasn't. Now, I would hope the course of the investigation would kind of flush that out. But that's the only challenge is that you can get some unethical leaders who use this as leverage against a subordinate.
Okay.
So that's where it can be a little bit dangerous. But again, I've never experienced, I don't even know if I've ever experienced anyone getting a first offense for this, but certainly not a second or third. So I'm not too concerned of this range.
And so what if that disrespect of a officer, a higher officer by a subordinate was communicated to a fellow officer? And then that's how the commanding officer found out about it. Is that a case? I'm just curious.
So
In
are
the
you,
locker room, I heard Officer X call you a really some bad names.
yeah. Yeah. If it's a superior that,
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Like if I can like the chief makes a decision and I'm going to another commander and say, "Oh, this chief is terrible. He's making a terrible decision." That commander should open a case on me for being disrespectful. It doesn't have to be
That's what,
directed towards specifically the chief
right.
in person or in writing. Yeah.
I was thinking more of maybe you could tell me if this is still a problem or if it ever was a problem. Uh, you know, male officers taking direction from female officers, commanders.
Mm.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, I don't look at it right now as a problem, but I have seen that in the past. Yeah, certainly.
So this
Yeah.
is a case where, you know, I don't have to do what you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind the range being equivalent to the off-duty member availability. That seems to be a little bit on the higher end. Folks are all right with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're at
Also, Captain, time check, and the next one is performance of duty, unintentional search, seizure, and arrest. Now, I got a feeling that we're gonna have quite a fruitful conversation about that one.
yeah.
Because
So
what is unintentional search and seizure?
yeah, we already had a pretty lengthy discussion.
Yeah, I
think
remember
I
that.
do think we did, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I accidentally opened up your trunk and saw something. Yeah, it wasn't in plain view.
But you opened the trunk and saw it and used that as a basis for an arrest?
Yes.
Or just that act in itself is considered a search, so it doesn't have to lead to anything, even a discovery, but just the act itself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. You can't search without a warrant. Okay.
Well, yeah, okay. We could talk about that in a couple weeks.
Well,
So
that's, yeah.
there's
Okay.
it's a much more in-depth discussion. So I'll send out my notes. I just again please ask that you kind of look ahead, and if there's anything that just kind of jumps off the page that you flag it. I think the hope was to have this. Maybe we can get through this with one more meeting. I know we have some time off, especially me in July and the rest of the summer. So there's a heavy lift after we're done here because I gotta go to all the stakeholders and have them review this. The city attorney needs to review it. It's going to be quite a journey. So I want to make sure we allow enough time for myself to do that.
So
Yeah.
you're saying you want to send this to us and have us look at it before next
Yeah,
week?
please,
Okay.
please. And then if anything jumps off the page, we can have a discussion. If not, we can just move on to the next manual rules. I think that will
Okay.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, Captain. And also, I mean, not just because we're going to the summer and everything, but also, we're these conversations that we've been having around consistency and discipline, and then with things, head in the direction that they're going in the courts, right? I think this is something that's really timely and important for us to all be looking at through the same lens. So yeah, the faster we could get done with our task to get it over through that more lengthy process, I think would be great.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment before we leave?
Please.
So I'm sure everyone knows, I don't know if you know, Captain Hubbard, that I'm a former president of the Coalition for Police Accountability that brought, Measure LL, Measure S1, blah, 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 macro to Oakland. So I'm very pleased that it appears that the department has satisfied the NSA requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like huge. I mean, we've been wanting this for so long. So I guess now they enter a period of sustainability until September. So my fingers are crossed that nothing else happens because this is great, great news. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you all. You're all part of that. So thank you.
Yeah,
You're
there were
welcome.
many,
Yeah.
many years and
Yeah.
hours.
I was shocked and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So great.
Well,
Great.
it certainly has been a labor of love, and this group here has been a glaring, beautiful example of what that looks like. So, thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Well, everybody have a great rest of the week and weekend.
Okay, I'm gonna get back to the
Alrighty.
game. Talk to you guys
Alright.
later.
All righty. Bye-bye.